What's up, guys? Mr. Bass here, coming to you from the tackle room, and we're going to talk about a really important thing that a lot of beginning fishermen don't know, don't have any experience, nobody to teach them about this, so I'm going to bring this up. It's kind of the elephant in the room. Preparation the night before you fish. It can make or break your fishing day. If you don't prepare the night before and you go out there and just grab your stuff and run out there, you're most likely going to have a terrible day of fishing. The reason is your lines are going to break, your hooks are going to bend, you're going to backlash, you're going to have any any unknown foreseen circumstances most likely going to happen because you're not prepared. Preparation is huge when you're fishing. So I'm going to take a few minutes, just walk you through the basics of what I do. This is not set in stone, this is just what I do to prepare the day before fishing, whether it's tournament or just going out in my boat, anything like that. This is basically what you need to do. So what I start doing is, as you see, I got all my soft plastics out here. The reason that I hang them up is to let them dry. If there's any water that's on them, you don't want your soft plastics to swell. So I go through all my soft plastics if I feel like I'm going to be throwing a lot of that, and just make sure I have everything I need. Make sure nothing's tore or torn up, nasty, anything like that. You don't want any surprises when you're out there on the water. So I'm just going to check everything. I'm going to go through, see the colors that I probably want to use, and then go ahead and get them together. That way in the morning time I'm not trying to grab all the baits that I need and get stressed before going fishing. I've also got all my hard bait boxes laid out here. I'm also going to go through all the hooks from any baits that I used on a previous trip. So I went fishing, yesterday. So I'm going to go through the baits that I used. And like perfect example is my rattle trap box. And I've got a crankbait in here. To me, that's just laziness. I should have put the crankbait back in the crankbait box. But that didn't happen. So I'm going to go through and just tidy up baits, and then I'm going to check hooks, make sure they're all sharp, the ones I used. If they're dull, I'm going to replace them out. I've got a whole box of replacement hooks here. I'm just going to go through everything, my jigs, and I really didn't use a whole lot of those, so I'm going to go through all these. See what all needs to be worked on, make sure all that's good and tight. I've got some line here. I've got line in the Plano line box. I highly recommend getting some of this if you're starting to use fluorocarbon leaders. So I'm a huge braid fan. All I use is braided line, and after fishing with some other guys that were using leaders and doing some research on it, I've pretty much gone to using the fluorocarbon leader on top of braid. Except for my crankbaits, I do use 100% all fluorocarbon on my crankbait rod. So I've had to start tying those knots and making sure everything's secure with those. So that's something you really got to pay a lot of attention to is if you're using leader material. Is that knot running through the guides? It abrases the knot up really bad. So I recommend using super glue. That kind of helps coat the knot a little bit. But even the super glue will wear down. So I'm going to show you one of those knots. We're going to check it right now. Alright, so we're going to check on my chatterbait rod here. This is a 6.6 Loomis GL2. This is old school. My daddy gave me this rod. It just works really, really well. It's got a great tip on it for spinnerbaits and chatterbaits. You'll see in my last video I just put out with the Stone Mountain. You barely even have to set the hook on these fish. But, this is the knot that we're using. It's a double uni. As you see, we're going to have to retie this because the super glue is completely wore off of it now. I use about 1.5 feet of leader material. I found that's pretty adequate. Then you're going to want to check your knot down here as well. So this whole thing's going to have to be replaced. Another way that I check for abrasion is I'll take my fingers and I'll run it up and down the line. If you feel any kind of gritty spot in the line, which this has, you need to replace that leader immediately. We'll try to show you, but there's a spot here and there's a spot right there. If I had caught any more fish on this would have broken. And this is 15-pound Invisex Seaguar. It's really good stuff. It's just kind of expensive. But throwing a chatterbait in the trees and wood laydowns and all that, it's going to get abrasion on it. You're going to have to replace it. So that's one of the things to check. You don't want to waste time at the boat ramp or on the shore, whichever way you fish, tying on leader material. You don't want to do that. It can expel an hour of your time trying to do that. Whether you get in a hurry the night before or whatever, you've wasted that good, it could be the magical hour that they were biting, and you've wasted that by tying on lines. And also make sure you have all your poles rigged up the night before. The other thing that you need to do is I have a video, the link's going to be below, on maintaining a bait casting reel. Now, spinning reel is a lot more forgiving, but a bait casting reel, you need to be oiling your bearings in that bait casting reel at least every other trip to extend the life of those bearings. So I won't go too much into it because I already have a video about how to tear them down and oil everything, all the bearings, grease the gears up and all that. I personally put grease in my gears. Some guys don't believe in that, but I do. You put almost grease in a ring and pinion in an automotive application, so grease in a reel is not going to hurt anything. It's going to help it with the friction and all. But just to recap, check your hard baits. Get all your soft plastics together. Make sure they're not rotten or swollen. Make sure they're good to go. Check all your lines. Retie. Super glue your knots, guys. I know it sounds silly. There's no adverse effect for it. If you're worried about scent, then just get you some scent and spray shad scent on there, crawfish scent. Use the super glue, especially with fluorocarbon or braid. Braid is extremely slick. Use the glue. It's cheap insurance. Let me show you the glue that I use. It comes in the squeeze applicator here. It's the Ultra Liquid Control. The gel control is a little bit better, but I find that I can use the liquid control while I'm pulling the knot tight, and it actually gets in the crevices of the knot and tightens it down. That knot is not going to slip on you. Especially important when you're tying leader material together. You want to make sure that is not the weak link in your line. I cannot stress that enough. And another thing I apply the night before is the Ardent Line Butter. Any kind of line conditioner works, but I really like this Ardent Line Butter conditioner. Keeps the memory down, helps your casting distance, but the main thing is, especially on fluorocarbon that has really bad memory problems, just spray it down and it will keep the line relaxed when you're fishing all day. It's a little oily on your hand to begin with. You get used to it, but use it. It's really beneficial to your fishing. These are the scents that I was talking about. Your shad scent right there will cover any kind of scent that you have. If you're worried about super glue smell or chemical smell, human hand smell, anything like that, you can use some of that. And any kind of scent, really. I just picked that up because it was there. But that's the main thing. I always like to check everything. Go through everything. Take your time. There's nothing worse than being rushed at 5 a.m. trying to get everything in the truck, hook the boat up, and you've forgotten something at home, something important like sunscreen. So let me touch on sunscreen. I use SPF 50, the aerosol. You can just spray it and go. Usually one application of that works. You do want to try to build some kind of tan if you're pale like I am, but make sure you wear your sunscreen. Don't be like me at the Seminole tournament and not wear sunscreen, and then you're peeling at work all day and your customers are grossed out. So that's just a couple tips for y'all. Make sure you have everything laid out. Check the weather the night before. That's another point I need to touch on. Check the weather. If it's going to be 20-mile-an-hour winds and 50 degrees, it's going to be cold. Don't wear mesh Nike shoes. Don't wear flip-flops. You need boots. Prepare adequately for the weather, people. If you go out there and be miserable, you're not going to want to fish anymore. So be over-prepared with clothes. You can always take layers off. You can't add layers if you don't have them. And that also goes to rain gear. If you are going out fishing and it's raining, have rain gear. Don't go out there when it's soaking wet. You're going to be miserable. Frog Togs makes a $20 rain suit that you can pick up just about anywhere that sells fishing equipment. And it is adequate for what you need. You don't need to go buy a $150 pair of bibs, which I recommend doing, but if you need a little rain suit, just go ahead and get the Frog Togs. Be prepared for the weather. So just take all of that in mind. Be prepared. If you use video equipment, charge it the night before. Have extra batteries. Clear your SD cards. Have everything ready. And then when you go fishing, you're concentrating on catching fish and not beating yourself up for forgetting something or, you know, something important like the plug to your boat. So I appreciate y'all watching. Let me ramble on about this kind of stuff. We're going to continue doing the Tackle Room series. It's just going to be kind of impromptu, not a lot of editing. You know, just me talking about fishing stuff that I do. And hopefully it helps y'all out with what y'all do. And again, thanks for watching.